What's up, Cam Every Day? Today, I want to share some little tips I took about success and things that will improve your overall happiness, which I think includes success. Climbing that mountain. You know, one of the things that I like to do recently is to write things down. And when I say that, I literally mean anything. I write down notes, to-do lists, stuff like that, of course. I think most people do that. But I also write down thoughts and feelings and whatnot. And I also write a lot of song lyrics. Sometimes the song lyrics are stuff I can actually use. Sometimes it's more just like poetry. And the best way to get going on this is to literally have multiple notebooks all around your house. Now, if you want to write some really touchy stuff, you might want to get one special notebook that you write your juicy stuff in, and then kind of have other various notebooks. I probably have about 4 notebooks. I've got this little one that I keep by my bed that I usually write in before I go to sleep and when I wake up. I find those are really good times to write as well. Kind of dump your energy from the day into a book is a great way to kind of put your mind at ease and kind of put some things in the books, so to say. And then the next morning, you have like this, you're coming out of a sleep, you've been dreaming, you have all these thoughts that are brand new to you, you're in a brand new day. It's a very fresh way to write. So I think those two times are very polarizing. Now, I think journaling is really important too. I used to journal quite a bit in 2013, and I actually stopped when I started getting a little more depressed and isolated, and I think that was the wrong thing. I totally get not wanting to write. This is why I stopped writing, is because I didn't want to write down a bunch of depressing things. But then you really don't have an outlet to shed those things on. And some of those dark thoughts, I know you should tell people, and it's really healthy to talk about those things to an extent with people. But I think there's really something you can get out of talking to yourself about those things. And it's not really the kind of inner dialogue that goes on with those thoughts. Like, you really need to put the pen to the paper to kind of let your mind flow. If you just kind of like are driving and having one of those mental discussions, you're not going to make the full circle things you really need to understand where you're coming from and how to get it down and how to resolve things. So I think when I started feeling those things where I didn't want to write down dark thoughts, it's kind of the wrong thing to do. I think when I started writing again, I think all the stuff I was writing down were pretty dark and super dark, probably some of the most dark things I've ever written. But by the end of the same passages and entries that I was writing these dark things, they were always ending on not lighter notes, but they were always ending with positivity. Like, I was always able to kind of express myself, get the feelings down on paper, and then kind of, wake up from it in a weird way and kind of end it on a positive note. So that's something I think I want to share about journaling, is that all the times I've had where I didn't want to write because I was in a bad mood or I was depressed or something, I think were the times where I probably should have been writing. Even if it's just a bunch of nonsense, it's still just good to get it out. I mean, when you're writing, it's kind of like you're your own best friend. It's like a little inner monologue to yourself. Everyone has their own different writing style. And I think you can kind of get into that, and you can kind of use that for many ways. I use it to entertain myself. I think I potentially use it to entertain others. I use it to reflect deeply on myself. I use it to communicate with myself better. Something about the pen and the paper and the time it takes for you to write and everything. There's something magic about it. And I haven't gotten the same experience from writing on a computer. I don't know if it's typing. I don't know if it's misspelling. I don't know if it's like typos. When I'm writing, I don't care about typos, and I don't make them as much either. It's strange, and maybe it has to do with the screen as well. I like the connection of just having a light and a notebook. There's something about my flow when I write. I notice when I wrote all the lyrics to the last Disfiguring the Goddess record, I tried to write them on the computer for a while, and it wasn't working out for me. And I always had to write them on paper and then put them in the computer. And I'm really proud of all the lyrics I wrote on paper. Now, something I want to talk about writing is you should read more. And people are always telling you to read more, and then you always kind of here's a problem where I think people stop reading, is they kind of have their hopes and sights set too high on what kind of books and topics they want to take on right away. Like, you might not be reading for a while, and then all of a sudden you want to read some like book on success or book on like anything. You know, those success type self-help books are really broad, I think. Like, you could even put like books about food, I think, in self-help or in some way or another. You know what I'm saying? Like, people always say lame saying self-help, and this is actually the first time I've actually said it myself, so I know where they're coming from now. I'm always just like, just read whatever the hell you want. Who cares if it's, it's got a funky label or something. So there's my first trudge into that. But if trudge is even a word, who knows? English, you can make up words. It's pretty cool. But I think you should really focus on reading whatever the hell makes you read. I tend to read things that maybe are, like, every time I read something a little heavy, I try and read at least like 2 books afterwards that are just kind of goofy, like some murder mystery book or some book on ghosts before I pick up another book on real milk, or a harder to read autobiography or something. So I would just focus on reading. And one of the reasons I say you should read is because reading is really going to help the way you write. And writing is going to help the way you speak, and they all kind of go together. So, this is kind of about things to make you happy and successful. And I really think writing things down is one of those keys, because it helps you have keeps better track and have a better track of your dialogue with yourself and your progress, and to kind of keep track of the days. It could be, a few days could seem like a week to me sometimes, and when I'm able to look back and see all the things I've written over the past few days, whether they're notes, whether they're to-do lists, whether they're lyrics, whether it's poetry, whether it's entries about my feelings or thoughts about dreams or whatever, it really helps me keep track of the days and keep track of myself in a way where I can stay on top of a lot of things to do with myself and kind of express a lot of things to keep me going, because I get a big buzz out of creativity and creating. So even when I write just a little tiny page of poetry, I get a little flame out of that. Now, my sister's a great writer as well, and she hasn't written in a long time, and she says this because she stopped reading when she went to college, and she brought up a really good quote to me. I don't have the direct quote in front of me, but it's from Stephen King, and he says, "You cannot write if you don't have the time to read." And I think that makes a lot of sense, because it kind of goes into everything I've just been saying about reading really helps your ability to write. And I think they all kind of go together. So if you're not reading anything right now, I just would pick up anything that you think is going to be entertaining. I think just that, there's something really magical about reading. It's one of the most, I think, unique experiences you can have in terms of entertainment. I know people like to watch movies and play video games and stuff, but I really think there's something immersive about reading, and where your eyes are just scanning the pages and you're soaking in all the information, and it's processing in your head, perfectly, and just this like recreated thing. There's something really far out and magical about that. I didn't include music in my comparison to reading, because I think music is a whole nother type of experience for human beings, and I think music can document so many different things for people, how you're feeling. Music could be very nostalgic as well. It could really take you back to other times and places. And so in a way, I think music is kind of similar to reading, more so than music is to movies. Or, there's always a scene in a movie that has a certain type of music that can make you feel some type of way. But again, that's kind of more connected to the music and the experience I think you're having in your head, and maybe you got some visuals to go along with it, but you're kind of having a moment with yourself, not so much with the movie. I know everyone has different connections to film and stuff as well, and I'm not trying to say that you can't have these deep connections to parts of film or how they made you feel or something, because I know that's definitely a thing. I'm not trying to put music above film in any way. I got way too much respect for film, but you get what I'm saying. I think reading and literature is kind of a unique experience, and I think I bet you all filmmakers read their heads off. I think there's a connection to some level of persistence that leads to success in reading that connects to the human mind. And I think that writing is a part of it, and I think that speaking is a part of it as well. Obviously, because you got to tell someone about these things at some point. But even if speaking is probably the least important in terms of this little circle that I'm just talking about that you could be doing with yourself. Obviously, when you get other people involved, your speaking is crucial. But I think if you're reading and writing a lot, your speaking will come more naturally, because you're going to speak more so how you write and whatnot, Like, I guess it's different, because when I write a lot to myself, and I kind of have a different dialect and tone and, a phrasing, I would say, when I'm writing to myself. And then when I feel like I'm speaking to people, like right now, I definitely feel like it's different than how I write, more so. That might be a more poetic kind of nuance to my writing. But, I'm just sharing some thoughts. Another thing I really want to share in this segment as well is to eat better and to eat more. I can't tell you how many times in my life where I really think if I was eating better and eating more, I could have avoided certain paths I went down. And I have a big list of videos I want to make, and I was debating before recording this which one to start on first, and almost all of them have some type of tie to this problem, which is eating, which is simply just eating more and eating better. And I think everyone has their own little connections to food, which you should, but I had kind of a disconnect with it because I didn't know what the hell to eat. And there's too much bad information out there about what is healthy and what is health, and I think you should eat a lot. The thing I think you should not eat a lot are carbohydrates and sugar. So that's not what I'm saying. When I say eat more and eat good, there's the good involved in it. I'm not saying don't eat a bunch of pizzas and ice cream and stuff. I'm saying get some square meals in your life. Get some type of discipline when it comes to food. This isn't supposed to be a big food video. I could talk forever about food right now. I've been really into food since about September is when I started to get really into it. And since September, I pretty much dedicated most of my time towards reading books, Disfiguring the Goddess, and learning more about nutrition and experimenting with nutrition and health. So I got pretty obsessed with those things. Those three things kind of reflect on a lot of the things I'm talking about right now. I read a lot. It really helped me with my writing process with Disfiguring. Disfiguring is a pretty big part of my life, and even though I haven't done it as like a full-time thing, I think that's out of respect for the project. I think I lay low on it at times to kind of let it brew in a sense, and I just kind of wait for when the time is right. I think a lot of people understand that and respect that with me and Disfiguring, but I still want to put it out there that it is a big part of my life pretty much all the time. And I think the whole eating better and reading was kind of in part with Disfiguring the Goddess, I wanted to improve my strengths writing and a lot of my mental clarity. I didn't really start to journal again until December, I would say. I started writing Disfiguring probably in September. But I was writing a lot of lyrics, and I had to read first. I was reading about a book a week. I was just obsessed, and kind of in part with the health. I think the sun is one of the most important things you can get, and I think the sun's importance is directly correlated with how good your diet is. When I was growing up, I had a funny relationship with the sun. I lived in Huntington Beach, and I was literally outside all the time. I swam. We had a pool. I swam pretty much every day. In the summer, that is. I did junior lifeguards and surf camps during the summer where I was outside in the sun. We're putting on sunscreen and stuff often, but I was still getting burnt pretty good. But I was still soaking up plenty rays as well. And when I was older, I kind of grew a thing to the sun. I kind of got this idea that it was bad. And there's a lot of harmful things about the sun. Like it could cause skin cancer and stuff, which I have to start checking myself soon because I've had blisters a few times as a youngin'. But I think those things are really related to how healthy your body is in a lot of ways. And there's things I've learned that, are connected to that, like your omega-3 ratios. I think if your omega-3 ratios are out of whack, meaning you have more 6s in your diet and in your body than 3s, I think that's where the sun gets particularly harmful. And I definitely used a lot of that information and put it into effect because I was trying to get well-balanced health, and part of how you get well-balanced health is you go and you stand outside in the sun and you soak it up. And I noticed that prior I would get burned within 15 minutes. Back to my timeline with the sun, I skipped a little bit. I started wearing sunglasses a lot. I started wearing jackets a lot. I started wearing hats a lot. I even moved to Seattle where you could wear all those things year round because the sun wasn't out and you kind of had to. You don't have to wear sunglasses, but I still would because the sun causes lots of reflective glare, and I was really into polarized sunglasses, so I didn't want any light coming into my eyes, essentially. So I was always covered my eyes, and I did that for years. Even when I moved out of Seattle and I moved to Reno, I was a fan of sitting outside the backyard, but I'd wear a big hat, I'd wear sunglasses, I'd make sure all my skin was covered, which is just totally devoids the point. And I had a bad diet then, so I think if I was sitting out in the sun more, I would have gotten burnt alive. And I even remember, I can't remember if it was this last summer. I was sitting outside the backyard, and we had some friends over randomly. And you just kind of sit around for a little while out in the grass or whatever. And I was like, I need to put some kind of jacket on because I'm going to get burnt. I could feel it, when you're feeling yourself getting burnt. So when I got into all the health stuff, I, learned more about why the sun actually starts messing up your body and not gives you the nutrition you need from the sun, which you could, the energy and nutrition you get from the sun is really magic. There's so much guidance and things that will come to you while you sit in the sun. But the only way you can do that is if you have that, good nutrition and health going into it. So they say it's all a balance, and this is where the balance kind of comes in. I really don't believe the balance is, you need to have when you eat, you need to have every color of the rainbow on your plate. I think balance is, these kind of small molecular things that are encoded in your DNA in a lot of ways, and you need a certain balance of these things for it all to work together. And if you think back, your ancestors were probably getting all that stuff naturally. And they kind of knew better too, because they just lived to survive in a lot of ways. So when you just live to survive generation after generation, you kind of figure it out. So yeah, I spent a lot of time in the sun reading books this fall. And the way I would do it is I would go out in the backyard and I would take off my shirt, because you're not going to get vitamin D from your hands and your face, you know? You got to show some skin. So I would take off my shirt and I would just stand there, and I was spending all my time eating as well, eating nutrient dense foods like liver and eggs and fatty grass-fed meat, beef, and standing out in the sun for maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours a day at least. And I was reading a book, and I was reading a book a week, and I just was on that stuff, and so many helpful things came to me during those times. So many moments of clarity and things I was thinking about and discovering about myself and about kind of my place, not in the world in a grand sense, but just like in like the immediate time as well. I'll probably make many videos about this, the sun, and the importance of health. I think most of the things I want to talk about, which I'm kind of crossing over in this video right here, have to do with baselines of health. And I think that's kind of why I did the Maslow's video so early on, is because I think that bottom section, health, water, or food, water, rest, so they should put sun in there too, but that's where you get complicated with that balance, because you need a good balance, but it's got to be like almost close to perfect for it to work. But it's only because we have a problem getting it because of the modern times we live in and all like the weird unnatural things that surround our lives day to day. I think that's really why people are getting so crazy now more than ever, and you got so much craziness going on in the so many different societies in the world, and the world's so, small now and connected, and the connectivity and all that stuff is really shedding a light on so much craziness. It's like I'm not even sure if everyone's crazy, but everyone knows everyone's crazy, or everyone thinks that everyone's crazy, and that kind of makes everyone crazy, and I think a lot of those things have to do with people aren't eating right, and people aren't getting enough sun. And they can't get the right sun because they're not eating right, and they're probably not sleeping enough because they're staring at their screens, and it's messing with their sleep. And drugs and alcohol mess with your sleep, and I think that's a huge connection to a lot of the problems with the greater society. But I bet you a lot of those things are bothering you as well, and you kind of don't think about that, I think, as honestly as one should. And I think I took some time to really get to that honest core of myself. I've spent a lot of honest time with myself in isolation and whatnot, but I wasn't, and I spent a lot of time in nature as well. I was really big into hikes and walking around in the desert or in the mountains or whatever. And, I still don't think, I thought that was kind of getting back to a lot of my ancestral roots, but I didn't realize the connection of those things with food and sleep and sun. I was fully clothed when I was out there. So I think now I've got a bit more of an understanding about these things, and I'm still isolated in a respect, but I feel good, and I really feel like sharing a lot of these things that have giving me success in that personal happiness type of way. And because I've spent a lot of time trying to figure these things out, and you talk to people a lot about these things, and everyone kind of has little experiences here and there, but it really takes a lot of time to get to the core essence of these things. And there's so many distracting things that you can come into contact with when you're either by yourself or with other people. So, you know, a lot of my future topics kind of have to do with some of the things about what I'm talking about right now. Like, I mentioned all the stuff about writing, and then I bring up food, and that just brings up, like, so much shit, you know? You start talking about the sun, you start talking about, you know, just your general health and how it connects to your mind and your body, and then you start thinking about how that gets out of whack and how everyone else is out of whack, and it kind of, you know, like being out of whack is like the new norm pretty much. Like you go on the internet or your social media and you just see so much disagreeable stuff, but in like in that world it's agreeable, you know what I mean? And I've never really been one to get into those things and, you know, get on the internet and start sharing a lot of what I mean most of the time. I think on Twitter I've been really vague about a lot of my tweets and stuff, and I think this platform right here on YouTube with the camera has always been kind of my number one way to express myself express myself to others in the internet day and age type of stuff. So I'm just really happy that I'm naturally kind of coming back to this place in front of the camera. And I want to thank you guys for watching. And I'm it's my pleasure to share my thoughts and feelings about these things, both things I've learned in the past and things I am learning every day and things I'm taking with me going forward. You know, like I could have started these topics in a year and, you know, off of keep doing these things, but I think it's really beneficial. And it's kind of my style to kind of be in the moment and talk about a lot of things in the moment. You know, like previous Kim Everyday stuff has really been in the moment things, but I was a younger guy, and I think when you're young, a lot of the things I'm talking about with, like, you have like a kind of a natural health to you. Like youth has a natural health system built in. Like things just recover easy, and, you know, even if you're eating ice cream and cereal for every meal, it's like you're still gonna feel fine. You know what I mean? But it's when you get to a certain point where that stops working and you don't know why, and you don't really even know. It's not like you don't know why that's not working. It's like you don't know why or what isn't working, but you know something's not working. And those are that little statement right there is a box that I have been in for years now, and I actively think about it constantly. And I've always kept myself in check. I've said this before on the channel. I never got myself to a place where I was making the wrong decisions in like a really grave way. Yes, I've made some wrong decisions that I kind of want to talk about in the future, but they're all things that when I look back on it now, it's like it was a natural part of my way to figuring out a way to get closer to myself. You know, there was like a struggle, and I was kind of like just grasping for things that were going to give me what I thought I needed, and every time it didn't work out, I got closer to where I am now, which is to a really deeper place of understanding about myself and my own abilities, and, you know, as a person, but also as a human being. And then there's this other thing I'm kind of getting on, which we're experiencing right now, which is where I talk about it, and I think a lot of people can probably learn from these experiences. And I think this is a great platform for this. I think you've got a lot of people on here who are doing things similar, and I think there's, I don't want to say this so that you can learn from everybody, but you find your grooves on YouTube, and it's crazy how you can find the things that you really need to hear sometimes. And I'm just, like I said, it's a pleasure for me to share some of these things, and I will continue to do so. So I want to include, to wrap up the video before I sign off on this vlog, I want to include some of the footage that me and Parker captured for the first Disfiguring the Goddess music video for the new stuff. I kind of have I've got some ideas going for the new Disfiguring the Goddess visuals as far as getting it on YouTube and stuff. And this was one of the first ones. I knew I wanted the first video to be like some type of time-lapsey thing of where I live, and I was waiting for it to snow, and the other day it started dumping, so me and Parker got in the car with the DSLR, and we filmed. We drove around the valley. We were sliding around a couple times, just listening to the album. The album's finished. It's on, I got it on a little private link that I've been jamming. I'm probably going to make one more final pass before I send it off to mastering, like a rendering pass. I'm using some analog gear, so it's like on my last pass I was changing a couple things, kind of experimenting, but trying not to push it so far one way or another. So I got to do one more pass so I can really nod my head on it, because I've spent so much time on it now, and not in a bad way. I haven't spent the time where I've been beating it to death. That's a bad thing. If you spend too much time on something and you're beating it to death, you've gone too far. This is like, I've spent a lot of honest time on it, and I've spent a lot of honest time making sure I didn't beat it to death, and I just need to do one more pass to try and get it as right as I can before I send it off to mastering. So we were jamming the album. It was a lot of fun filming stuff for this video, and I can't wait to share the new stuff. I think we're going to do a premiere on Slam Worldwide, which is one of the more popular brutal underground death metal YouTube channels now. My Argon channel just doesn't have the reach it used to have, so I have to kind of, a lot of people were telling me to go to Slam Worldwide, and Slam Worldwide themselves actually contacted me. And the day we filmed the video, I had someone reach out and was like, you should put Disfiguring on Slam Worldwide. And I really think it's going to be a great way to kind of break the ice with, getting Disfiguring out. No pun intended, because this is an icy video. So I'm going to leave you with some footage from that. I don't want to include, we'll see if I include the music or not in editing. I don't think I will. But I just want to say thanks for watching, and have a fantastic day. And I hope some of this information has helped someone, and I will continue to shed more light on some of the things and topics that I feel. I have a little list of videos I'm going to be making soon, but I wanted to get another video about some of the core concepts that have really brought me through a lot of stuff. And a lot of the topics I will be talking about in the future kind of throw back to these concepts, because, like I was saying, some of the things that I've experienced have brought me to these concepts and ways of thinking, in a way. Without further ado, thanks for watching.
These trees up ahead.
Good too. I've taken way too long on it just to be like, alright, fuck it. Although I know it doesn't matter in the long run, because I was like, I remember when I submitted Black Earth Child for mastering, and then like the day before it came out, I was like having a panic attack. Straight up, because I didn't know how like it sounded, and I was like so on edge about how the sound of it was.